So first off, welcome to today's webinar. We know everyone, their time is valuable, and we really appreciate the folks that have joined this webinar to take a little time with us and go through this presentation. We have industry expert and advocate Stan Schofield on in the presentation, this webinar entitled Healthcare Disruptors and Transition Strategies for Success. Now, most people probably already know who Stan is, former president of Nordics Regional Laboratory Corporation within the Maine Health System, also founder and managing principal of the Compass Group, a federation of 32 regional laboratory corporations within the largest and most prestigious healthcare systems in North America. Actually, Stan's role with that group is head of new product technology and evaluation. Our audience here, independent clinical laboratories and pathology groups. So we've tailored this presentation to hit on points that should resonate with you. Without further ado, welcome, Stan. We do appreciate your time, and we really look forward to this.
Thank you, Michael. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, or good morning, wherever you might be. It's a pleasure to be here today. I'm coming to you from Portland, Maine, where normally this time of year it'd be wonderful weather, and it's a little rainy, a little cool, but we'll get started. So with that, I'm going to start the slideshow, and hopefully at the end we'll have time for questions. All right, so let's kick it off. Healthcare and disruptors and the transition strategies. There's a lot going on in healthcare in general. And, you know, we're all working to do a better job. Hopefully today we'll give you kind of a roadmap of the things that are happening in the laboratory space. All right. Today's lab world is VUCA. What is VUCA? VUCA is a military term. It means volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. Sounds like the world I live in and work in every day. Disruptive themes. We live in a time of disruption. Workforce, availability, can you find anybody? Stability, will they stay? Reliability, will they show up? Competition. We used to take from hospitals and restaurants and movie theaters for entry-level people. Well, they all have 401k plans now, and they all have health benefits. And so we're stealing from each other. And on top of that, industry stealing from us because they're paying better. Compensation is driving everything, and wage pressures are mounting. I mean, just in our organizations, we've seen 14, 16, 18% wage pressure increases in the last 2.5 years. Automation, keeping services open and operating, means machines and technology where there are no people. It also means getting things digitized, computerized. Pathologists don't want to run all over to 2 or 3 or 4 locations. They want the slides, and they want to electronically render the diagnosis. Insurance payers, government payers, financing. Insurance payers are getting very, very, very powerful. There used to be 40 insurance companies 25 years ago you had to deal with. There's probably 5 or 6 big ones now. And they're all trying to take over each other. And they're hiring and employing physician groups and medical office and computer system people. They are turning into a major, major potential threat. Well, not potential, they are a threat. Government payers. We've all had massive cuts. Somewhere around 52%, all revenue per test in the last 7 years has been lost. Okay, you got Medicare, you got Medicaid, and then on top of all of that, the insurance companies are trying to drive everything below Medicare rates. Again, financing. Financing's got a whole new wrinkle with the economy in the last year and interest rates increasing, bond covenants, debt structures for hospitals, health systems, and businesses in general are problematic. People having to come up with more money. The cost of getting money is a lot more than what people have had. We had a pretty good run there for 10 years, almost zero interest. Consolidations. You got large commercial labs buying all these other labs. You've got hospitals buying hospitals, systems joining with systems. It's all about scope and scale and trying to reduce costs. At the same time, the insurance companies and the government payers are trying to reduce cost and pay you less. Lost margins. We've touched on that. You know, hospitals, health systems have historically run about a 3%, 4% margin. Private business, if you don't do anything more than 10%, you shouldn't be in business. Large industrial complexes, 20 or 30%. You get places like IT and informatics, and they're running 60% margins. Margins are being lost because of labor costs, decreased reimbursement, and supply chain material costs going up. More of the disruptive themes. We've talked about mergers and acquisitions, lost margins, contract labor costs. The number one reason hospitals, right now, 50% of all the hospitals and healthcare systems in the United States are in the red. Kaufman Hall, the consulting group, just released data yesterday that things are looking better because a couple of months ago it was 60% of the hospitals losing money. But the margin now for healthcare system hospital networks in this country is at 0.3% for a margin. You don't make any mistakes and stay in business. And contract labor costs, you know, where nurses cost $125 an hour, that is not going away. It's gotten a little better. It's not like at the peak of COVID at $250 an hour for a critical care nurse, but there's no new revenue streams coming into these facilities. And it cannot be sustained without new revenue growth and cost reductions. Assisted intelligence and informatics. Everybody's Chat GPT and AI. Interesting. Wall Street's going crazy. The stock market's going crazy. Anything to do with assisted intelligence. They say artificial intelligence, but it's not. It's always been assisted. And informatics. Informatics is the nervous system of what we all do for our labs and delivery of services to patients. The never-ending cost of informatics. The idea is you used to be able to have a basic computer system and you could do result reporting. No longer allowed. Same time, cost of informatics. Cybersecurity. I know our health system here just spent another $26 million on cybersecurity enhancements. I mean, it's just crazy. Crisis management, we've had the pandemic, we've had the workforce, and you say, well, what's next? Could there be anything else? We've managed to hold on and we're getting our feet back. And then we got hit, of course, with inflation. Next, we're hitting with the proliferation of consumer and urgent care delivery. There's competition on every street corner for delivery of services. Patients want convenience. but they don't want to pay for it. They want home testing, but they don't want to pay for it. So all these are big challenges. And then, of course, at the end of all this, supply chain constraints. It was impossible to get reagents and consumables and pipette tips during COVID. Then it got hard to get blood drawing tubes with anticoagulant. Supply chain constraints are still difficult, and they've increased all our costs for shipping and delivery of goods. So in the lab world, and this is all labs, independent labs, anatomic pathology labs, even research labs, there are 5 rules. These are my rules. And I think there are 5 rules for success in the laboratories. Rule number 1, you got to add clients. Hey, that's good. You got to grow the business. Whoops. Try it again. Rule number 2, you got to keep the clients. It's very expensive to get them. You don't want to lose them because chances are you can't get them back. Create new revenue opportunities. Hey, you can't do the same old stuff all the time and grow and keep clients. You got to get paid. You know, it's hard to run a lab. It's really hard to get paid and paid well. And finally, you have to reduce expenses. If you don't, you're going to see, I mean, look at the technology companies. They're all cutting way, way, way back because they overexpanded, overgrew, thought they had it all figured out. And they know now that that's just not true. So expense mitigation, expense control is a very critical function. The old school for adding clients, how you did that, well, you do some outreach, you be in the community, and you do some doctor's offices, and you do a few local hospitals, and it all worked out pretty well. You'd have providers that are your friends, they practice at your site or used you as a lab, and it all worked out. Health system, the new school is clinical integrations. If you're working with a health system or you're near a hospital or a health system and you have a relationship with them, it's all about clinical integrations, okay? You have to be seamless. You have to almost be invisible to them. If you're providing a service, you can't be the exception. You cannot be the outlier. Direct contracting with employers. As a lab, independent lab or pathology lab, direct contracting with employers is a very attractive option, but difficult to do. It takes time, takes connections, and takes talent, and it takes data. Direct-to-consumer testing. Sounds good. You know, here's a box, have them mail it back in. Far more complex. State law, reimbursement, who's paying for it, inventory, supply chain, all of these things. Keeping clients. The old school, it was like you'd have the account rep or somebody go by and say, hey, how's it going? And bring them a lunch or, you know, a Subway order or a pizza. You do an annual business review. Well, how you doing? How are you doing? Okay, we're good. We're good. Thank you very much. IT connectivity. We hook you up to the computer. We hook you up to the fax machine, and we're good to go. Keep the office staff happy. Keep the office manager happy. Take her Christmas presents. Today, the new school is strong customer service. They don't have enough people to do their job, and they want you to do half of their jobs for them. They don't want to look up the result. They want you to tell them the result. They will call you and say, what's the result? They won't look it up. Tailored metrics program for quality services. What's important to them? You have to ask, Why do you want this? What do you need? And how are we going to do it? And then you have a plan. And they want to know how they're doing on the plan. Balanced scorecard. What's a balanced scorecard? Well, for you as the organization, what's the financial performance of this account? What's the financial performance of this relationship? How's the service going? Is it costing us too much? Are we making any money on this thing? You need to know, because if you're not, the last thing you need to do is make that up in volume, because you will be out of business. Patient experience. Everybody now gets an email or a text. How did you like your car wash? How did you like your grocery shopping experience? You got to do this. People are expecting, and they want a voice. When it's not good, they want somebody to talk to about it. And then you have to participate in all payer agreements. If you're not paying, if you're not in the agreement, somebody else is, and they're getting the business. And, I've heard all the stories about, well, they only pay 40 cents on the dollar. Well, that's true. Maybe your costs are too high. Create revenue opportunities. The old school. You'd add an occasional new test. Oh, yeah, we've got this, new kind of assay or this new kind of stain, and we're wonderful. You'd add a few local clients, modest clinical trials, and you never really do anything with pharma, but there might be a diagnostic or a doctor wanted to study some kind of thing that he had a little connection with the medical school in the community, or a reference lab, or maybe a small pharma study. You kind of work with them. Create new opportunities. It's the new school it's value-based contracting. Value-based is all the buzzword. Everybody's saying we got to do it. We got to do it. Method, equipment validation, clinical trials. Clinical trial work is very lucrative. It's hard to get into it as a standalone independent lab or as a pathology practice, but you can do partnerships. You can work as a site or a satellite. More highly complex testing. It's all about cancer medicine and next generation sequencing. Everybody needs to be doing that because that's the future. And biobanking and data warehousing. You got to have scope and scale for this. Biobanking and data warehousing is very lucrative, but it's very complex and very competitive. Get paid. The old school lab billing operation. We want to be able to do our own billing. We don't want to have to count on anybody else, and we don't really need a bookkeeper. We need a billing system. There were tempered collection efforts. Well, if the doctor down the street didn't really pay you, or the small hospital didn't pay you, you can kind of work with them, and everybody got it worked out over time. Political physician relationships, some things you messed with, some things you did not. And medical necessity was this the right test? And should this have been done in a fairly rudimentary, lab formulary kind of way? Now the new school is sophisticated revenue cycle management. Well, that sounds like it's a complex thing. Well, it is. You got to have smart billing capabilities. You've got to have smart information systems. You got to chase the money. You got to have a billing staff with coding and collection ability. The old days, you didn't see very many coders or billers in a lab. Well, you got to have them. And they insist, that they get the right kind of access to data and analytics to help them do their job better. Fighting for what is owed. It's one thing to do the work, it's another to get paid. And let me tell you something. The insurance companies are not making it easier to get paid. You have to fight with them, and you have to have the facts. And you have to have the sophistication and the informatics to do it. Data extraction tools, business analytics, you need to know what you're getting paid, when you're getting paid, how by who and how much. Because there are more denials than ever. As we've moved into more of the pre-authorization realm of the insurance companies and all the Z codes that are required for authorization of molecular assays, good revenue cycle management is absolutely critical. And then finally, oops, I can't quite see that. What did I do here? Well, I cut that off my own screen. What's it say, Michael?
More denials than ever. And then honestly, I cannot see it at the bottom of my screen either.
Well, okay.
So we move on.
We'll move on to the next one. Reduced expenses. The old school, you'd cut your FTEs, you'd freeze travel, freeze capital, freeze hiring. And, the last 6 months, seeing all the hospitals, health systems, and labs that I know, that's kind of what they're trying to do. And I'm like going, yeah, how much is freezing travel really going to do to knock down the $125 an hour for a nurse contract labor cost per hour? But anyway, today, the new school is about reducing expenses. You got to have sophisticated metrics. You have daily monitoring. What is the operation? What are your volumes? What's the workload? We have 12 hospitals and we check every shift, every workstation, volumes, instrumentation, staffing levels, performance, what was our turnaround time for 5 different kinds of tests, just to see where things are on a daily basis. We have this big report card every morning, 8:30. Flexible staffing wherever possible. Well, that sounds good. Well, the Monday through Friday, 8 to 4:30 kind of stuff sounds good. Nobody wants to work a second shift. Nobody wants to work a third shift. They certainly don't want to work weekends, but they'll give you a Tuesday and a Saturday for 4 hours. Well, if they've got the skills or they're willing to do it, you can count on them. You got to be flexible. Lab administration. No matter what you do, 30% less senior leadership. And why I say that is Quest and LabCorp come in and outside for-profit entities come in and they say, I'll cut your expenses 20%, 30% automatically. Well, if you got lab administration and somebody like Quest or LabCorp or a national lab comes in and says, oh, we're going to cut your leadership group out by 40 or 50%, you're just hanging out there looking for trouble. Okay, so those are the rules. From the rules, we move into the questions that you must be able to answer in order to be a successful laboratory. How do you enhance your services? How do you improve quality? How do you reduce your costs? And how do you add value? Ooh, if you can do all 4, you got a growing, viable organization. If you can't, 2 out of 3, 2 out of 4, no, it's just not going to fly. How do you enhance your services? Well, first of all, you got to know where you are in this world. You need to know how you stack up against everybody else. Because, no mama ever had an ugly baby. Well, what does that mean? It means you think you've got a good organization. You think that you're doing a great job. Well, you don't know what everybody else is doing, or you think you know, but you got to have really hard information in informatics. You got data. You need data. You got to know what your client's expectations are. You got to ask them. You got to meet with them. You got to talk about it. You got to remember it. You got to have regular contact by service and sales reps, even when there's no problems. Client scorecard. What's important to them and how you've been doing it. It's your report card back to them every 6 months, once a year, quarterly, whatever you guys agree on. Remember, know your client expectations. Management and leadership expectations. Your management and your leadership, the expectations of them by your customers need to be well understood. You, as an operator, need your management and leadership expectations defined and well established as part of your culture and your operations. And direct to consumer testing. The demand is there. They want the convenience. What's important? What's legal? How can you meet those needs? How do you improve quality? Daily operational huddles. As I said, 8:30 every morning. All 12 hospitals, the labs are on the phone and Zooming and talking about our teams and talking about what the operations are, what happened last night, what happened yesterday, what's the instrument performance, anything going on with the problem, what's happening with any incidents, turnaround times, all of that right there every day on a spreadsheet. And people, it takes time to run it and time to populate it, but it's invaluable for management. Forming best practice teams. If you got to do something, like change information systems or add a new service or add new tests, you need your best practice teams. Who are the best of the best that you have? Have them set the standards. Don't have the same old thing done by the same old people all the time. Bring in new blood, shift it up, switch it up, and get the best out of everybody. Leadership development. How do you get the best out of everybody? You develop your leaders. There aren't any med techs and lab people that are extroverts and natural born leaders and managers. It comes with time, training, and education. And how do you do that? You invest in them. Site member meetings. If you have multiple sites for your lab or your department or your pathology service, you got to go to the other sites. You got to show them some love. You got to go hang with them a little bit. You got to go meet with them. What's the issue? What's the problem? Here we are. We're one big family. Site member meetings. You got to know what's going on there too. Participate in operational excellence programs. Well, what is that? Well, first of all, you need your own program that you're constantly improving. You're trying to enhance and develop your staff. And at the same time, many of your customers have these programs. You need to participate. What's my role? How do I do this? What can I do to help you move your organization forward? Standardization of technology and processes and procedures. If you have multiple sites, you can't have 6 ways of doing stuff. Or we used to do it this way, but now, we don't do that except this one place. Well, they're the outlet. You can't have it. You need standardization. And through the standardization and staff competency and retraining, you got to have people who know what's going on. And through mergers, acquisitions, transfers, or new people, you can't let the intellectual capital of your organization slip. It's about competency and retraining. Best of class objectives. Benchmarking percentiles. You don't know what you don't know. Well, I can't help you. But if you know where you're going, how do you want to get there is an easier roadmap. I mean, if you're operating at the 95th percentile, good luck and God bless you. And you don't need to listen to this lecture. But if you're running at 50%, okay, you got work to do. How do you decrease costs? Management of the sites. If you're not watching them, they're probably doing okay, but not as well as they could. Standardization of buying. One of the things that we did, no matter what, if we took over another hospital or another laboratory, we could save 20% of the cost just because of our buying ability. I'm part of a large trade federation, which is the Compass Group, and we've got about 700 hospitals, and we swing direct contracting deals for equipment, reagents, and service contracts. And it's a huge difference. I mean, just remember the national labs on any given day, their operating expenses are 30% lower than yours on your best day because their stuff they buy is much cheaper. They have more automation and they have scope and scale, and you're competing against them. You got to measure the productivity. And it doesn't mean that you need to draw 12 patients an hour as a phlebotomist, or you need to cut, 300 slides a day, or you got to screen 75 pap smears a day. What it means is you need to know what's going on. You need to know that the staff you have is competent and that they're doing a good job. If they're not at the 95th percentile, that's a management issue and a technical issue. But you have to measure. If people know you're measuring, they will perform better. Mix and adjust levels of staffing. What's the right number? Now, what this means is, do I have to have the most technical, qualified MTASCP stocking the refrigerator, dumping the trash? No. What's the right mix? Could it be 70% technical staff, 30% assisting staff, 50-50, 4-year degree versus 2-year? That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about you have to have the highly trained, highly educated, and skilled doing what they do best and nothing else. I know. They don't want to hear it. They like the variety in their job. Well, if you got enough of those people floating around, good luck and God bless you. Okay. But the rest of the world and the rest of the Compass Group members, which now 17% of all positions in all the labs of 700 hospitals are open, and they don't have a whole lot of MTASCPs around floating around with nothing to do. And everybody's trying to get to the mix and adjustment levels for staffing, what's the right skill set, and that they're not wasting those skills by, like I said, sweeping the floors or loading the refrigerators. How do you add value? Optimizing your patient testing, business analytics. Well, some people call it point of care testing. Some it's convenience, some it's same day testing, some it's random access. We don't do batching anymore, but you got to have the data. You got to figure out what is it that the lab or pathology practice can really do to make a difference. Work constantly to move the patient through the healthcare system. That does not mean a hospital system down the street. It's all of healthcare. Patients don't want to hang around healthcare. You got to get them in. You got to get them seen. You get them treated. If they go to your lab for any kind of services, You have to be on the ball, on time, and error-free. Okay, so you got to get them through the system, because length of stay or access or appointment time or miss well checks and things like that all score against the deliverer and provider of services. Value-based lab analytics. Now, this is where you really need good information. Specific studies on the right test. Well, what was the test done on the patient? For the right patient, the right reason? Do we have any medical information about that? And at the right cost? If you're going to do contracting and risk contracting for services, you better know what you're going to do to provide all this kind of information. Support and analyze data and scorecards. You know, I've been talking about collecting all this data and all this information. Well, it doesn't mean just put it in a drawer. It means look at it. Well, what can you do? What's important? What do you really have to attack? Your clients want to know it. Support and analyze your data and your scorecard. You got to share your scorecards. So if you guys are so good and you have a wonderful organization, a wonderful operation, don't keep it a secret. Give it to your clients. Share it. Share it with your insurance companies who are paying you. Share it. Brag about it. But you got to have it in a format and a design that'll impress people. Just because you say you're good quality, well, you get a chance with real information systems and really good data to prove it. And finally, you know, you need to establish schools and training programs. We got to grow our own. We've been training on our own phlebotomists for 15, 20 years. I mean, in a formal way, programs, every 2 months, 20 students, things like that. Med techs, histotechs, they're not growing on trees. They're not coming up through the ranks for medical universities and technical schools. And so you're gonna have to grow your own. And if you're depending on the local junior college or the local college to produce these folks in a formal, recognized, trained, certified manner, you're wasting your time, because people are just not going into these fields after 4 years of college and a massive bill for student loans and tuition. They're going to go after different kind of job formats, and that's kind of the history. So, you know, we've talked about the 5 rules for the laboratory, and I've given you 4 questions that you need to answer for people to really do business with you and for you to have your daily operations competitive and help you with the transition post-pandemic. But really, there's only 3 elements now I want to leave you with. And there's 3 elements that are absolutely key to success. The first one, you got to have some imagination. You can't do it the same old way. You can't do it the way we've always done it. You got to listen to new ideas. You got to try new ideas. You have to have information to feed and fuel your imagination. Now, you can have the greatest idea, the greatest concept, and the greatest imagination in the whole world. But if you don't do something with it, you put it in a drawer, all hope is lost. You must execute. The execution on your imagination is the critical factor. And then finally, How do you do that? That's what leadership is. That's why you're on this conference today. You're the leader. Without leadership, you can't execute, you can't have an imagination, and you can't prevail. You can't succeed. Anybody standing on the sideline hoping that somebody's going to take care of them usually gets left behind. So with that, I'd like to thank you for your time today, your attention today. I appreciate the opportunity to share my thoughts with you today, and thank you, LigoLab, and your support. And I wish you all a great, great day. Michael, thank you.
All right, thank you, Stan. That was very well done, and a lot of information, a lot of things to unpack. If anyone in our audience attending this webinar would like to have a question answered by Stan, go ahead and use the chat option that we have in this Zoom webinar call. A couple of things that really resonated with me, Stan. Well, communication skills really came loud and clear to me. This is a business. If you want to be successful in this business, it's hands-on and it's communication. It's talking to all the different stakeholders.
That's it. Absolutely. You know, people don't like to be excluded, and it's hard to cover all the bases. But, you know, the things that I've had in my career that I wish I could do over is areas around where communication was not as strong as it should have been or as effective as it should have been. And, you know, people say, I don't know anything. Nobody tells me anything. You can't allow that to continue, and you can't allow that to happen. So, you know, as they say, you can never over communicate. And it really is true. And when times are tough, the better communication you have, the more success you'll have.
For you personally, was that a skill that you acquired over time, or was that something that kind of came easy to you?
Well, I think by hard knocks. You know, one of the things that happened when I was really young in the lab business, there was an organization called the Clinical Laboratory Management Association. And I was at a lab at a children's hospital, and on a Friday afternoon, I was called in. I was very, very, very young, and called in and by the pathologist and said, on Monday, you're in charge. And it was like, I had no idea about management. I had no idea. Here I am at a fairly sizable children's hospital, 25 years old, being told I'm in charge. And way back then, it was like, oh my God, what do I do? And there was an association, CLMA, that I quickly found out about, and I went to their meetings. And for years, I would go to the meetings, and you'd learn a lot of these things. They were management subjects and communication subjects and operational excellence kind of programs and process improvement. And over time, I eventually became the president of CLMA. And it was a wonderful experience in shaping and helping me become a better manager and a better leader. But it wasn't natural. It took work and it took resources. And I was fortunate enough that I've been given a lot of opportunities. And you know what they say, it's all about execution, and you take advantage of it. And so far, I've had a pretty successful career. And as leadership goes, I consider myself very fortunate because of the teams that I've worked with and all the great people I've been able to be associated with.
Well said. A couple of questions have come in from the audience. The first one, can you be more specific about how to compete with large national labs?
Sure. Service, service, service. Now, I don't know your geography. I don't know what your services are, but they will cut you, slice you, and dice you. So you have to give the service aspect, which they normally don't do a very good job, a major emphasis. For us as a regional lab, we have to compete against Quest and LabCorp, and ours is around most of our work. If we get it in by noon, the results are out by 5. And so it's almost same day service. We have sales and marketing and support teams that call on clients, build relationships. And also, a very key factor is the pathology relationship with the local providers. The large labs cannot and do not, if you want to talk to a pathologist with one of those guys, good luck. If you have a real question about a test and you need to talk to somebody, good luck. So you differentiate yourself as, I am here for you. Can I wax your car? Can I floss your teeth for you? Whatever it takes. It's service, service, service to make them feel special. Because at the end of the day, it won't be about price. You have to have competitive pricing. You got to be able to compete on price, and you cannot expect that, well, I'm special and I'm going to charge 10% more because we're special. They'll cut you off in a heartbeat. So those are my quick off the top of my head suggestions, not knowing your exact circumstance, but it's all about service differentiation.
Okay. Next question. And once again, we still have a few minutes if anybody else would like to try to chime in with a question for Stan to answer. We have a question here. How can a lab obtain data to demonstrate value when there is no feedback from results provided to the hospitals? What value parameters can labs directly measure?
Well, I don't know your exact relationship. Are you just serving as a reference lab, or are you providing all lab services? If you're a single reference lab or limited services, then the chances are you're going to get paid from the hospital and they will have the value-based contract. And you'll have to meet their reporting criteria. The one thing that's really, really interesting is everybody talks about value-based medicine and the risk sharing, but nobody wants to do anything about it. And nobody has really good laboratory tools yet. You got to get the patient through the health system. The idea is, what service do you provide? And how can you get the patient into the services and out of healthcare services as fast as possible? So if you only do the test once a week and that's slowing things down, you got to figure out how to do it more than once a week. When you're talking about the kind of data that you've just asked, you have a great question. I don't know enough about your organization and what you're doing to understand your abilities and capabilities, but let me give you a great example. Tricor Regional Labs in Albuquerque, New Mexico, my really good friends, member of the Compass Group. They did a study that talked about acute kidney injury based on the difference in creatinines on patients on admission and serially for 2 or 3 days when they're in the hospital to see if there was an injury and that the creatinine level went up. And that was along the lines of, okay, was the patient dehydrated? Did they become septic? Did they have a drug interference? Did it do something to screw up the kidneys? And they did the study with the hospital around value base of the lab. And they were able to demonstrate that some of the protocols there did not minimize the risk of acute kidney injury to patients in the ICU. And based on the lab data, they were able to go back and say, if we did this and we changed that, we'd have patients with fewer kidney injuries coming out of the ICU. It was a very sophisticated, very elegant, value-based, but it was a partnership. So what happened was the lab has ability to measure things. The hospital wasn't looking at it. The medical staff wasn't looking at it. And the lab stepped up and said, this could be an issue. And they took the leadership of that. And they executed that and were able to demonstrate. And the result was the hospital made a ton of money. And the reason they made a ton of money is they changed the protocol and patients were less injured. And when they were injured, it was legitimate and they could bill for a higher level of acuity of care and they got paid more. So from a value base, the patient did better. The hospital did better. I'm not sure the insurance companies did better, but that's kind of a quick example, not knowing a lot about your history and your operational abilities.
Okay, very well said. Good example. We have time for, I have two more questions, but they're both related, so I'll kind of connect them. One is, how do you think AI will impact lab operations and services? And is it worth it to invest in pure AI with the expectation that it will increase automation?
Well, that's a very big question. I mean, AI is this big term, and everybody on Wall Street's going crazy. Everybody's going crazy. I don't know what AI is, okay? The idea is, can they do things smarter? Can they fill out the forms for the insurance companies on your billing and revenue cycle management easier and faster without having 10 clerks? Maybe. You have to build the program. Just because it's running around and everybody says it does this and does that. I don't know if you've ever submitted a question to Chat GPT, but the stuff I want to know, it comes back as pretty bland and pretty benign and doesn't tell you a lot of good stuff. So I think number one, AI in its most sophisticated interpretation would take those creatinine values at the lab in Albuquerque and say, hey, by the way, look, guys, we got kidney injuries here. Did you know what's going on? And they would notify you. But that's years away, okay? Because they're not into the information systems that labs run. It will be embedded. It will start getting into, this past week, Epic, the computer company, just said they're going to start putting Chat GPT capabilities in emergency medicine modules at hospitals. And one of the great things I saw about Chat GPT was a clinician trying to describe a complex medical condition to a patient's family that were not very sophisticated. And it put it in a language that everybody got on board in the family. They understood it and they carried on the therapy at home. So back to what I think is going to happen in lab. Could it be pattern recognition and pathology screening? Well, we already have some of that with pap smears and the whole logic SciTech combination machines and stuff. But could it be really diagnostic? I think we're years away from that. Could it be, flagging of abnormal results or quality control? Probably that'll be the first applications, but it'll be clerical applications and redundant paperwork kind of things first, quality control management and alerting and flagging and intervention second. And then by the time we get down to diagnostics, I don't know the time frame because I don't know the FDA and all that kind of stuff, but we're not seeing anything here that we're going to be able to put our hands on and make a big difference in our workload here in the next 2 or 3 years for sure. After that, all bets are off because maybe they'll get Chat GPT to design something for the lab that we haven't asked the right question yet. Good question. I don't have that big a crystal ball. I hope so.
Would be nice, yes. Well, to respect everybody's time, we're at the top of the hour now. Stan, tremendous presentation, and really appreciate the time and effort that you put into it. For the audience, great questions. We really do appreciate that interactivity and that feedback. Certainly, if there are any follow-up questions after this webinar is over, you can reach me directly at Michael K at LigoLab.com, and I certainly can pass along more questions to Stan if they come in to me. So Michael K at LigoLab.com. With that, I think we will conclude. Stan, thank you very much. Have a wonderful
All right, everybody.
Wednesday.
Thanks for your time today.
And thank you for everybody tuning in. And we will also have this available on our website in a short amount of time for people that want to watch it again or share it with their colleagues. With that, I'll say goodbye and thank you once again.